In the first stages of discovery, she had begun to write about what she was learning, notes from her study of the Bible, texts for her students, but she was not yet ready to publish. In 1872 in Lynn, she waited, as always, for the sense of divine direction.
One day, opening her Bible for inspiration, she read, "Now go, write it before them in a table and note it in a book, that it may be for the time to come forever and ever." The words of Isaiah spoke to her like a command.
She had no funds, no publisher, no patron, virtually no public, no private place of her own to work in. But she took up her pen, listened for the thoughts that came to her, and wrote.
Day by day, the phrases spilled onto the blank pages. Leaning on the sustaining infinite with loving trust, the trials of today are brief, and tomorrow is big with blessings. The prophet of today beholds in the spiritual horizon the bow of promise. The demonstration of Christianity that our Master gave is again required, and no other sign shall be given you. Love is impartial and universal in its adaptation and bestowments. The open fount that saith, "Ho, every one that thirsteth, come ye and drink."
As she wrote, she moved often. A few months in nearby Peabody, Massachusetts, staying for a time in Lynn, then to Swampscott, then back to Lynn.
She wrote in room after room, her pen racing to keep up with her thoughts. Pilgrim on earth, thy home is heaven. Stranger, thou art the guest of God. All may avail themselves of God in science as a present help in trouble. God is love. More than this we cannot ask. Higher we cannot look. Beyond this we may not go.
Other students offered places to live, a room at Putney Bancroft's, some months with her student George Allen, writing, rewriting.
In the decades ahead, the inspiration in phrases like these would endure through every revision. Atonement is oneness with God. Jesus of Nazareth explained and demonstrated his oneness with the Father, for which we owe him endless love and homage. I love Jesus more than all men, treading alone a path of thorns, in speechless agony exploring the way for others. We cannot choose but work out our own salvation on the principle Jesus taught and demonstrated, casting out devils, healing the sick, and preaching the gospel to the poor. Later she would recall, when I came to the writing of it each day, I did not know what I should write until my pen was taken up and I was ready to begin. It was divine mind expressing itself.
As the light of each day faded, the scattered sheets were gathered up. Next morning, she would again take up her pen to write and revise. Week by week, the book took shape. In the fall of 1873, her work in progress was submitted to a publisher and was summarily rejected. For the next 6 months, she labored to revise it. Her students were taking her edited pages away and making clean copies, only to have her scratch out lines and scrawl in rewordings to be copied anew. Spring 1874 came. The manuscript was submitted again for publication. Again, it was rejected. Publishers said they couldn't understand it. No one would read it. She pressed on with further revisions. In these drafts, as in her classes, she might speak of her discovery as moral science, sometimes metaphysical science, sometimes Christian science, with a small s, sometimes science of life.
She wrote, for example, to admit God, the principle of all being, and live in accordance with this principle, is the science of life.
On July 7, 1874, she copyrighted her work with that title, The Science of Life. That same month, on Bromfield Street in Boston, she found a job printer, W.F. Brown and Company, willing to produce the book if all costs were paid. Thus, the book's author would become also its publisher, under the imprimatur Christian Scientist Publishing Company. Students advanced the funds, and soon type was being set. At last, after 2 years of handwritten drafts, she would see the words in print. By the end of summer, the printer sent the first galley proofs for her eager eyes to read. They were a disaster. There were hundreds of errors. On page after page, the typesetter had reworded the text to make it more compatible with his own views. In the process, her carefully worded meanings were misstated. Now, all those errors were set expensively in galleys. Without funds, she had to avoid the cost of resetting entire pages, but the errors had to be corrected.
Years later, she described how she did it. I had to find the letters for my words that would fill the spaces of the ones removed, and so count every letter I took out and each letter I put in, and puzzle over the words which I must get in this way to express my meaning.
The task must have seemed endless. By the end of 1874, she had been working on her manuscript 2.5 years. She had no income. There were students quarreling with each other and with her, former students maligning her.
Incessant labor 7 days in a week, she told a friend. Tired to death, broken down with persecution. This is my present lot.
I have known her when nearly crushed with sorrow, but she wrote on. I have known her when friend after friend deserted her, but she wrote on. I have seen student after student bring ridicule and reproach upon her, but still she wrote on. Putney Bancroft.
All this time she had been living out of a trunk, moving in, moving out, over and over.
She described her situation in a letter. No home to rest in, one room only to work in.
As the new year dawned, typesetting and proofreading were going slowly, and her search for a home was at a standstill. At 53, Mary Glover had not had a settled place to live since her frequently uprooted life with Patterson, from whom she was now divorced. Years earlier, when Patterson left her homeless, her wealthy sister, Abby Baker Tilton, had come to her rescue. She offered to build her sister a place to live near her own home in Tilton, New Hampshire, and give her an income, all with one firm condition. Mary was to drop her newfangled ideas about religion and divine healing, which were an embarrassment to the Baker and Tilton families.
The offer of a home must have appealed to Mary. She would say of herself, "The strongest tie I have ever felt, next to my love of God, has been my love for home." But she would also say, "Has God entrusted me with a message to mankind? Then I cannot choose but obey."
She turned her sister's offer down. Now, in early 1875, as winter turned to spring, she was in yet another rented room in a boarding house, Amos Scribner's house in Lynn at number 7, Broad Street. One day, looking across the road to the recently built house at number 8, she saw a for sale sign. Could this be the place for her? Owning that house would require every penny she could raise. She would have to rent out most of the house to repay the mortgage. But this was what was needed to complete the work at hand and take the next steps. The house was purchased. By the end of March, she was once again packing up her things. But this time, it was different. As her few belongings were moved to her own small attic rooms under the eaves at 8 Broad Street, she was home at last. Home, for her, a place to work. But the work took an unexpected turn. She found there was another book called The Science of Life. It was advertised in the local papers. Her book would need a new title. For weeks, she waited and prayed until an answer came.
She described the moment. Its title came to me in the silence of the night, when the steadfast stars watched over the world, when slumber had fled. And I rose and recorded the hallowed suggestion, feeling sure that God had led me to write that book and had whispered that name to my waiting hope and prayer.
The change was sent off to the U.S. Copyright Office. The book's title would be Science and Health. Then things took another unexpected turn. Publishing the book ground to a halt. Despite having payment in hand, the printer stopped setting type. In response, she sent no more corrected proofs to be reset. Communication between them stopped. The standoff was a frustration and a mystery. As the work stoppage continued, she sensed something more that must be done before the book could be published. Something she said was painful for her.
She later recalled, I yielded to a constant conviction that I must insert a partial history of what I had already observed of mental malpractice. During the next weeks, she wrote 13 strongly worded pages exposing the evil typified by the practices of Richard Kennedy.
During these same weeks, the printer, on his own, felt impelled to resume the work and was once again typesetting the material he had in hand. In her attic room, toiling at the task she had hoped to avoid, Mary Glover rigorously confronted the error of her students' malpractice, manipulating a patient's passive thought through mental suggestion, while manipulating the patient's head.
In paragraph after paragraph, she denounced this as mesmeric control over minds, a secret trespasser on human rights, worse than poisonous drugs, a habit more pernicious than opium eating, capable of great mischief and even crime. We thank wisdom that revealed this great error to us before these pages went to press.
With blistering language like this inserted into the final chapter, Healing the Sick, the author was satisfied that her text was complete and work should proceed. She bundled up the pages and headed for Boston. In Boston, the typesetter too had wrapped up his work and wanted more copy to set. At Lynn's Eastern Depot, Mrs. Glover walked onto the platform and found herself face to face with a printer who had just stepped off the train coming out from Boston. Under his arm was his package of freshly set pages for her to proofread. In her bag were the final pages of her manuscript for him to set in type. They talked, exchanged parcels, and went their ways. No doubt he was wondering at the striking coincidence of this crucial meeting. The mental logjam had been broken. Typesetting in Boston, proofreading at Broad Street resumed. By September, the chases were locked. The presses were cranking. By the end of October, the first 1,000 copies of Science and Health were ready to bring to readers the author's dearly paid-for words.
She prefaced those words, hoping all things, enduring all things, to do good to the upright in heart, and to bless them that curse us, and bear to the sorrowing and the sick consolation and healing. We commit these pages to posterity. Mary Baker Glover.
On the last of those pages, the book's final 2 words, both capitalized, gave the name by which her discovery would become known to posterity: Christian Science.